'Tis the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to the world. Now could I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on. Soft, now to my mother. Apart, lose not thy nature. Let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. My tongue and soul, in this be hypocrites. How in my words never she may be shent, to give them seals never, my soul consent.
Our paraphrase is, it's the darkest time of night when witches come out, graveyards release the souls of the dead, and hell sends out disease and fear. Now I could do such awful deeds that even the light of day would not make them less horrifying. But I must go to my mother now. Don't let craziness and cruelty enter my thoughts now. I must be blunt, but not inhuman. I will speak harshly to my mother, but I must not use violence. In this I am a hypocrite. I desire to punish my mother, but I must restrain myself from harming her. However violent my words are, she must know that what she has done is wrong. Oh, please, my soul, don't let me hurt her in the flesh.
So we can first look at the structure. In the first portion of it, he's just venting his anger. He's saying horrible things because he's enraged. But then there's a break when he says, "Soft now, my mother." Not soft now to my mother. He's thinking to himself, "Oh, I have to get back to my mom." And in the second section of the soliloquy, he's talking about how he's going to restrain himself and he needs to calm down and focus on the task he needs to complete. But we should all know that self-restraint is rarely effective.
So now moving on to what this shows about Hamlet's state of mind. By the time Hamlet gets to this soliloquy, his state of mind is beginning to show serious signs of degradation. His mind is starting to crack under the intense pressure which is being put on him by the situation he is in. However, his mind hasn't fully shattered yet. He is still able to have some resemblance of sanity and control. Hamlet has been consumed by his desire for revenge. At this time, it is pretty much his only goal, and also his curse. His desire for revenge is so intense that he is having trouble restraining himself, although he still possesses some mental faculties to again present this resemblance of control. However, his method of which he is using for restraining himself by holding his problems inside is causing him even greater pain and destruction. It's just eating at him from within, and he cannot hope to keep it up for long. It's just going to end up causing more and more trouble for him.
Okay, so the theme of this soliloquy obviously is revenge and how furious he is at his mother for basically marrying his uncle not very long after his father died. And it's sort of a contrast between what he wants to do and what he knows that he can do. He's venting his rage, but he's trying to restrain himself. And as you can see most clearly in the line, "I will speak daggers to her, but use none." He's saying, I will speak harshly to her and tell her what she's doing is wrong, but I have to restrain myself. I can't kill her. I can't physically harm her. So that's basically what he's struggling with throughout this soliloquy.
So to move forward in the play, this sort of shows how he's desperate for action and how his madness is threatening him, threatening to overcome him, and how he's obsessed. And he has to act at something.
So moving on to some of the some of the terms and references. In it, he references in the line, "O heart, lose not thy nature, let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom." Nero was a crazed and ruthless Roman emperor, known for basically killing a lot of people, possible connection with the burning of Rome, and eventually committing suicide. So, in essence, when he is mentioning that he does not want the soul of Nero to enter him, he is trying to put forth that he does not want to be taken over by anger and violence, and that he does not want this whole situation to end in self-destruction. Although what the path he's going on is already leading to that. In the last line it mentions, "To give them seals never my soul consent." Seals are like an official stamp of approval, and in that line he's referencing that his soul would never be able to fully approve of the actions he would like to commit. And now there's also somever, which means however, and shent is punished.
So, basically, even though this is like a really short soliloquy and it might seem insignificant, it's really important to the storyline because it's sort of giving you a window into Hamlet's process of deterioration and how he really wants to act, he really wants to punish his mother, but he's trying to restrain himself at the same time, so it's just, he's getting more and more crazy and obsessed. That's all. Does anybody have questions?
What would you say about like the actual language of it and the flow of the lines, not their meaning, just how they sound?
I think the first half is definitely, it's very like fast paced, and it's like spinning it all out, the rage that's in his head, and then the second half is more restrained and slower and a little bit more poetic, less just violence and more him trying to compose himself again.
You can see that a lot in the punctuation. In the first section there's very little punctuation, and in the second half every line seems to have some sort of punctuation at the end of it, but he's breaking his laws.
Anybody else?
Now might I do it, Pat? Now he is a-praying, and now I'll do it. And so he goes to heaven, and so am I revenged. That would be scamming. A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, do this same villain send to heaven. Why, this is hire and salary, not revenge. He took my father grossly, full of bread, with all his crimes broad blown as flesh is made, and how his audit stands who knows save heaven. But in our circumstance and course of thought, 'tis heavy with him. And am I then revenged to take him in the purging of his soul, when he is fit and seasoned for his passage? No. Up, sword, and know thou a more horrid hint. When he is drunk asleep, or in his rage, or in the incestuous pleasure of his bed, at game, a swearing, or about some act that has no relish of salvation in it, then trip him, that his heels may kick at heaven, and that his soul may be as damned and black as hell, whereto it goes. My mother stays, this physic but prolongs thy sickly days.
Okay, and our paraphrase is, I could do this now while he is praying. I will, and he will go to heaven, and so my revenge would be ruined. The villain kills my father, and for that, I, his only son, do send this evil man to heaven. Why, this is a job, not revenge. He killed my father wrongly when he was comfortable. Now that all his crimes have been revealed, and how his reckonings stand, who know all but heaven? But in our circumstance and course of thought, he feels guilty about it. Am I then able to take revenge and purge his soul when he is ready to die? No. Go away, sword, and wait for a better time. When he is passed out drunk or in rage, or sleeping with Gertrude, gambling, swearing, or doing something that would never not be sinful, then trip him so he may reject heaven, and his soul will be as black as hell where it goes. Gertrude is saved. His health only prolongs his sick days.
Okay, so we broke up our soliloquy into 4 parts, and the first part was the now I might do it, and this is where he decides to kill Claudius. He actually makes up his mind because he's finally happened upon an opportunity. But then the next large chunk, he realizes that in doing this he will ruin his chance at revenge because of what Claudius is doing, because he's praying. And then third part, where it starts with up sword and now more hard head, he changes his mind because he realizes that he has to wait or everything will be ruined. And then lastly, he just decides that he's going to give his justification for waiting. We said that Hamlet doesn't know what he's going to say when he starts his soliloquy because he discovers Claudius and then basically works his way through his thought process of
how he will seek revenge and if this is the right moment and when he will. And then the soliloquy responds to the theme of indecision that happens all the way through Hamlet, because he can't make up his mind until the very end, and then finally decides that he needs to wait to not ruin his revenge. The lines, if you don't look at the context, appear very smooth and they tend to flow together, but the ideas in them are very contrasting. And then this theme of indecision is a pivotal moment here because he finally decides that while he has to take revenge, he knows it has to be the right moment. And even though he's going to wait, he has set his mind to actually seek revenge. Any questions? Okay.
How all occasions do inform against me and spur my dull revenge. What is a man if his chief good and market of his time be but to sleep and feed, a beast no more? Sure, he that made us with such large discourse, looking before and after, gave us not that capability and godlike reason to fuss in us unused. Now, whether it be bestial oblivion or some craven scruple of thinking too precisely on the event, a thought which quartered hath but one part wisdom and ever 3 parts coward, I do not know, why yet I live to say, this thing's to do, sith I have cause and will and strength and means to do it. Examples gross as earth exhort me. Witness this army of such mass and charge, led by a delicate and tender prince, whose spirit with divine ambition puffed makes mouths at the invisible event, exposing what is mortal and unsure to all that fortune, death, and danger dare, even for an eggshell. Rightly to be great is not to stir without great argument, but greatly to find quarrel in a straw when honour's at stake. How stand I, then, that have a father killed, a mother stained, excitements of my reason and my blood, and let all sleep, while to my shame I see the imminent death of 20,000 men, that for a fantasy and trick of fame go to their graves like beds, fight for a plot whereon the numbers cannot try the cause, which is not tomb enough and continent to hide the slain. Oh, from this time forth my thoughts be bloody, or be nothing worth.
This is our paraphrase. All things are opposite my reason, yet make more motivated my needs. What is life, if all time in life is to sleep and eat, no longer animal? That God gave man words and thought, looking out, did not give us the power of thought to be wasted. Now, if being a beast or having base morality and thinking too much, which itself has little wisdom and is mostly the cowardice of men, I don't know why I pretend to be made of action, since I have reason and ability to do so. The evils of earth compel me. Look at the army of numbers and powers, a leader, a monarch, a fragile youth, with high determination towered towards heaven, talks of hopes, abstract and unseen, showing mortal uncertainty and folly to the consequence of glory and adventure. If for nothing, to be great it is not possible without great cause, except when fighting over nothing, for the sake of honor. What am I then, with a murdered father, a ruined mother, frustration to my mind, family, body letting off all easy while I do nothing, and legions of men dying for the mere promise of glory, dying for nothing of consequence which cannot even hold their dead bodies. From now on I will act or be nothing.
Okay, we split this up into 3 major sections. The first being where he just kind of whines about how life is meaningless if you're just there sleeping and eating, just kind of what he's been doing the entire play. And then the second section, he's kind of like, oh look, an army. There's a bunch of guys that are going to go die. And then the third section is, he kind of gets, it's where he decides he's going to kill his uncle. Because he's looking at all these guys and he's just kind of shamed that these guys will go and die for nothing, but he won't die even though he has a cause for it.
So, what we said for is Hamlet, does Hamlet know what he's going to say? We said that he discovers it in the moment because he's in this area looking at this army and he begins to think to himself, these people have cause and reason and their hesitancy doesn't even exist because they have the promise of something great. And at the same time, he's looking back at his own life and he's thinking, what have I done? I've been completely dishonored, and compared to these people, I've basically done nothing when they have the potential for nothing in front of them, but they see it as everything. And we said that based on the fact of this, the soliloquy does respond to the theme or thesis of what he's trying to get across, because when you look at the beginning of the play, when he says, "Sure, he that made us with such large discourse, looking before and after, gave us not that capability and godlike reason to fuss us unused," he's basically saying that we haven't been given the gift of life with the ability to reason and think, to have it be left unused and to sit around and do nothing. And he's using his army as this justification for the fact that now he wants to get rid of his hesitancy and he wants to finally act on his deeds and finally commit the act that he's been looking to get done since the beginning of the play.
We said that.
Well, it kind of flows fairly well, as Trevor said, because he's just been sitting there for a minute or two thinking about how this army is going to go and pretty much kill themselves over nothing. So he just kind of talks about how what he's been doing is useless, then flows into what he's seeing, and then flows into what, because of what he's seen, what he's going to do. And the only part where it gets a little choppy is where he kind of goes, and then look at this army, because he's just been talking about how life is kind of meaningless if you don't act.
And for how does the soliloquy move the play forward? Well, before all the other soliloquies and monologues were sort of about how all this confusion of all these events that have happened are sort of infringing on him and making him hesitant of going towards revenge. And this soliloquy sort of is the transition of him wanting to go and actually do these acts. It's him having sort of this undiluted thought process.
So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Is there any questions?
Any questions?
Sorry, that's okay.
So that's it for 3 groups. Sam, there's 3 groups. Everybody else comment.